put this setup part later. I'll cut that up. Hello and welcome back to the Chelmsford News Show. I'm Tom Christiano. Well, I'm very excited as we have a very knowledgeable environmental engineer with us on the show today, Peter Spawn, who is also a Chelmsford resident. And we're going to be talking a lot about the environmental spaces in Chelmsford, some of the rivers. We're here taping at Hart Pond in South Chelmsford today, which I think is one of the most beautiful open space areas in Chelmsford. I stop here almost every day when I'm biking on the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. So I love this pond, and Peter is going to talk about a lot of what's going on environmentally in Chelmsford. I think he's the vice chairman, I believe, of the Conservation Commission, chairman of the Tree Committee, is that right?
Yes.
And you're on another committee too, in town, or a couple of committees?
Yeah, I can mention them briefly if you'd like. Yeah.
Great, yes, please. Okay.
All right. Well, why don't I start? Hey, Tom, thanks for this opportunity.
Yeah.
I really want to share what I've learned over the last 4 years in getting involved in a lot of what I call environmental activity in our town.
Yes.
And it's interesting, we're here at Hart Pond. Hart Pond is the headwaters of one of the town's most important system of streams and watershed and conservation land, and that's called River Meadow Brook. And we can talk a little bit more about that later, but it turns out it's an incredibly vibrant and valuable resource to the town, and a lot of what we're going to talk about is aimed at protecting all the human values that we get out of land like here at lovely Hart Pond.
Yeah.
So, you want me to just dive in?
Yes, please.
Well, I want to share a couple of thoughts with everybody. You know, this environmental work that the town is doing, which I'd like to describe a bit, is all really aimed at human health, human well-being, and also wildlife. But it turns out, the scientists tell us that quality of wildlife eventually will impact the quality of human life, and so that's an underlying theme. I'd like to just say a little bit about myself. My wife and I have been in town for 45 years. I'm trained as a civil and environmental engineer, and I have 40 years of working for a consulting firm, working for governments and industry on all kinds of different environmental aspects of big projects. So think railroads, airports, real estate development. And most of my work in my life really has been to try to figure out the causes and the solutions to environmental issues, and whether those environmental issues are impacting human health. So yeah, it's been a great experience for me to try to work towards finding where I can add something to the town. And what I've learned is the town's doing an awful lot of environmental type work, but it's not always thought of in those terms. So I'd like to explain a little bit that over the next 10 minutes.
Certainly.
So Tom, you mentioned, you know, for about the last 4 years, I've been on the Conservation Commission, Tree Committee, Clean Energy and Sustainability Committee, and also helping with some of the strategic and master planning activity going on. And it's really, I'll talk a little bit about that in a second.
Yeah.
So I did want to say that what I've learned is, by getting pretty deeply involved, is Chelmsford is very well positioned to continue good environmental stewardship, and by that I mean our town has a great team of town staff. Quite a few committees support things related to our environment, and town meeting has been very gracious in approving of a wide range of what are really environmental projects, although they may not be thought of or presented quite that way. So I'd like to sort of start by sharing 4 key themes that I think are kind of guide my thinking. The first is environmental stuff is all designed to protect human health and also critters. And a good example is, it's been estimated that 80% of all cancers are caused by environmental factors. Now that's not necessarily, pollution to the ground. It could be anything. But it's obviously important. Another good example is, as the weather changes, storms become more intense, rainfall becomes more intense, that causes more flooding, more property damage. So a lot of the environmental stuff, regulations, actions are aimed at property as well as human health. And the wildlife biodiversity is a hot topic. If you're not familiar with why biodiversity is important, maybe that could be another show, Tom, but that's another reason for a lot of this environmental action. So 4 key themes. I want to move on. The second is the environmental work the town does is driven, not because somebody thinks it's a good idea. It's driven by 2 things. One is environmental rules and regulations that town meeting has passed, as well as perhaps the state. But the environmental actions are also driven by a whole series of planning efforts that all towns do. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. The third main point I want to make here today is we have great town staff. And I have found all of our town staff from top to bottom are very quick to help any volunteer that has an idea or a project or has a need. So I'd like to encourage everybody to think about where places you could volunteer. Chelmsford has a pretty vibrant community of volunteers that work on about 50 different types of committees and boards. But there's always room and need for more volunteer support, and there's a lot of different things one can do. I'll talk more about that in a bit. And then finally, I just want to say, environmental progress is all aimed at making it a better town to live in, and it's really requires a thoughtful team approach of people with different jobs working together and incorporating a good environmental action into a new project, whether it be the work that's coming up here at Hart Pond, or a new playground, or the town sewer project, or whatever. Many of these projects require a fair amount of thought if you want to get the best environmental results. So let's see, Tom. I did want to define some words. Those of us in this part of the town activity, there's a bunch of buzzwords, and those buzzwords are things like environmental,
Yes. Yeah.
Sustainability,
Yeah. That's good.
climate adaptation, and resilience. And each of those terms does have a slightly different meaning, but they're all aimed at making the town a better place for humans
Yes.
and the wildlife that we share everything with. And again, keeping in mind that wildlife turns out to be pretty important to the future of the human race in a lot of different ways. So it's all kind of the same thing. Don't want to get hung up on terms. And a couple more quick things, Tom, and then I want to talk about 4 or 5 different parts and committees and departments that are doing environmental work in town.
Great.
Great. Yeah, but it's interesting. I made a list off the top of my head of projects that the town has done, big projects, people know about some of them, that are environmental projects over the last 2 years. And off the top of my head, I had 25 major projects that have been built or done around town. I don't mean studies, I mean actual improvements to the town.
Over what period of time?
Over the last, say, 2-3 years. And,
really? Wow.
And we don't really think of a lot of these as having an environmental component. We think of it as the Varney Playground reconstruction. Well, yeah, that included a major environmental project to take pollution, some of the pollution, out of Freeman Lake through the stormwater systems that DPW designed and had built. So there's a lot of things going on in town. So I guess before I get into some examples, Tom, I'd sort of like to kind of explain. I get this question all the time of people interested in the Conservation Commission. So how does the town come up with environmental projects? I mean, is it just because somebody wants to do it, or some environmental groups lobbying or whatever? No. The projects originate from a couple of sources. First is town laws, and town laws and state laws. And a great example is drinking water standards. The water districts are technically not the town, but of course they're part of us. And there's standards that have been set, and you've all heard about PFAS. So there's an example of regulations driving what the town needs to do. But the second thing is the town planning documents. And there's like 10 different projects that turned into plans for the town. Those plans were all created by a consultant expert working with citizen groups, and they have names: master plan, strategic growth plan, open space and rec plan, stormwater plan, climate vulnerability and solutions plan. There's a whole series of heavy thinking that have recommendations, and there's a lot of environmental related recommendations on how the town can get better. And to me, that's like community coming together with an expert to figure out what's a good thing for the town to do. So that drives some of the projects. So again, I just want to say, like, in all of these projects, or all these master plans, if you're interested, pick one up and read it. You'll find a list of actions, find something you're interested in, and start asking a few questions. The way you get involved is, it actually is not, it's easy once you find the path because everybody's willing to help. But there's not a master list of things you can work on. You really do need to identify somebody on town staff or a committee, and send them an email saying, hey, I'm interested in X, Y, Z. Can you help point me in the right direction?
Yeah.
So I really encourage that because the more the merrier. All right, so Tom, what do we have? 15 minutes left, maybe?
A little more than that, yes.
All right. Well, apologies to the audience. I know I don't like hearing people speak for 20 minutes, but there's a lot here to talk
No.
about.
Peter, you're the perfect person to speak for a while about all these things because, as I mentioned to you, you have a great voice for TV and radio, so you're very blessed with that. And I appreciate it. So hopefully the people at home will really enjoy what you have to say today and learn a lot from what you have to say today, and then maybe volunteer also with the town, as Peter was saying.
Yeah.
So thank you,
All right.
Peter.
Well, I'll run through a couple of examples. What I'd like to do is talk about 5 or 6 different groups in town that are very active in these environmental improvements to town. And I'm going to start with our community development department. We think of Evan Belansky, our community development director or town planner, runs the department, and we think of Evan as being heavily involved on the planning board because he's on TV twice a month with them.
Yeah.
But they do a lot more, and a couple of environmental things that I've had a chance to work on with Evan, and he's been leading, is several projects to figure out what changing climate is doing to the town. Increased rainfall, more heat and whatnot. And there's been a series of 3 or 4 grants that Evan spearheaded that have done things like built the emergency generator at the library. There's a new project to help the Conservation Commission and the Planning Board get better designs for projects that are being proposed and looking for permits. Low impact design, you'll hear more about that later. Funding for tree planting, flood zoning work. A whole series of activity that kind of originates or starts with the planning function of our town. And of course, Evan is deep in most of the studies, if not all, that I described in getting consultants and organizing committees of residents to look at all these different issues. The next big part of town is our DPW. And
Department of Public Works, as
Yeah.
everyone knows.
yeah, and under the leadership of Christine Clancy and her department heads and all of her staff, they kind of do infrastructure except clean drinking water. And by infrastructure, we mean roads, the sewers, energy management, a whole bunch of things. And so some examples of what they do that have a direct benefit to the environment is replacing our aging culverts that tend to collapse and not transfer water and not allow passage of animals back and forth along the watersheds. A lot of flood study work. That it's raining harder as the climate changes, but it also has more drought and rainfall cycles, so it's a little confusing to try to track it. But all the flooding a couple summers ago, DPW jumped on that with some hydrogeologists and hydrology experts and came up with some plans, and they're implementing those to try to stop people's property from being damaged by flooding. I'm going to run through this quick. Invasive plant control work is led by DPW here at Hart Pond with Freeman lake, but with a lot of community input and a lot of community meetings
Do
and
we
outside
still
experts.
treat the pond every year?
This
or every
this one is treated. Freeman
all-
has not to
This
date.
is not to, never, or just this year, you mean? This,
My understanding is
Oh.
Baptist or Hart Pond here is treated.
yeah,
There's a pretty active community group that has been working on that for a long time, and
Yes.
DPW is involved. And then on Freeman Lake, there's been a lot of biologists studying and making recommendations. And to date, Freeman has not been treated with chemicals.
I see.
There's a lot of issues there. It's not quite as black and white
Oh,
as we might think.
but that keeps a lot of the, what is it, the algae or little green plants coming up on the water and making it kind of polluted with stuff rather than being, you could swim in Hart Pond, as many people do in the summer, and it's a pretty clean pond, I would say.
Yeah, right. And so if your primary goal is a swimming pool type water, then you want to treat it with chemicals because you don't want certainly the toxic algal blooms that are encountered
Yeah.
in the summer. The challenge is a couple of things. One is, I'm no expert, but the experts say there is some evidence that if you use chemicals in a lake, it impacts how phosphorus, which is a fertilizer, gets released, and the chemicals itself could end up through weeds rotting, and there's a process, could actually contribute to the harmful algal blooms. It's not black and white.
Wow.
Also, the question is the word biodiversity. So if whatever you do to a lake reduces the food for critters, then that's going to affect your wildlife. And if you study up on what that means, we are losing plant and animal species, and there will be long-term ripple effect
Oh,
we're not going to be happy, or our children are not going to be happy about.
oh, I
So
see.
again, that's another
see.
example why we have experts help us,
Yes.
because this is complicated.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to go on to the next.
Yeah, I'll keep
Topic.
going. So DPW does a bunch of other stuff. I do want to mention DPW. I want to mention our sustainability manager who works for DPW, Chris Haley, and that'll introduce my next topic. But the town has been doing a lot. Town meeting voted to put the town on a path of what used to be called net zero, but the idea is to reduce your energy usage. That reduces carbon pollution,
Yeah.
which is good, but it also is often an opportunity to save operating costs. So a good example is solar panels on most of the town buildings, or some of the town buildings, provide most of the town building electrical needs right now.
Good.
But there's something really cool that has happened with Chris's work at DPW and also working with the Clean Energy Committee. Chelmsford was nominated to something pretty important. It's called the State Climate Leaders Program. And there were only 40 of the 350 communities elected into this program. And it puts us first in line for grant funding related to things related to climate. So the town landed $1 million under that program to do renewable energy on the new fire stations and the Parker Middle School plans. So we really are kind of emerging, on the forefront or near the forefront of some of these futuristic thinking. We're not interested in doing anything crazy. We're not interested in raising taxes to do any of this.
Thank God.
But grants is a great opportunity,
Yes.
and so with a little thought, there's an example of what volunteers working with the town can accomplish. The other cool thing is we're one of 50 communities that have funding for something called an energy advocate. And long story short, if you own a home or a business and want to understand what sort of incentives, rebates you can get from the Mass Save organization, call Matt Wilkins at our DPW. He is here full-time under a grant for 3 years to help us all figure out how to take advantage of basically state grant money to make your homes cost less to heat and cool. So these are examples of things that we can all do together. All right, I'm going to move faster. There's a Clean Energy and Sustainability Committee that's been involved in some of the things I mentioned. We do have a climate action plan that the committee put together under direction of the Select Board and Town Meeting. 3 years ago, and we just did a little audit, and we are working on this stuff to try to reduce, the carbon footprint of our town. So there's a whole bunch of things the Energy Committee did, but I'm going to jump ahead because I want to talk about trees. And I'm looking at a lovely tree that volunteers planted here at Hart Pond, working with a tree project that the town put together. Let me explain how this works. Well, first of all, trees are really, really important, and for a lot of reasons that we don't always, at least I don't always think about. One of the first things is cooling. The average summer temperatures are increasing. Obviously, more shade helps cool. However, they also help reduce flooding, and they also help reduce the runoff of pollutants. So it rains hard on grass like this. Any dog poop or goose poop or whatever, can wash into the lake, could end up in our streams. The trees kind of help absorb that and slow that down. This biodiversity thing can be greatly countered with the right kind of trees, and there's a whole bunch of other things. So the important point here is that we used a model available from the Forest Service, and pretty sure the town is losing 1 to 2% of its total tree canopy every year for each of the last 8 years.
Why is that, Peter?
Well,
Okay.
yeah, that's the key question. And the simple answer is we lose trees when there's development, either a major commercial project or, you want to put an addition on your home and there's a tree in the way.
Yes.
That's
okay,
one
so
problem.
Some of that development.
Yeah, the second problem is there has always been tree diseases. So ash trees have been particularly hard hit the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And thirdly, we have a lot of old trees in town. Think of all the big old trees along roads. They don't live forever.
Yes. Yeah.
So we call them hazard trees.
I see.
So here's how it works. The select board commissioned this tree committee, and we work very, very closely with our tree warden, which is a 100-year-old position established in almost all Massachusetts communities. And our tree warden is Christine Clancy at DPW, and she is extremely active with the tree committee, and together we work on this tree problem.
I see.
So lots of examples, but some of you are aware of, we're planting about 100 trees a year, but it has been under grant money, so keep that in the back of your mind, town meeting reps. We want to continue this. But we're just finishing something called a front yard tree planting program, where we realized we had planted a couple hundred trees on town property. We're not running out of spaces per se, but if you're trying to improve your tree canopy, which is a town goal, by the way, it's been set as a town goal. Obviously, people's yards are a huge part of that. So DPW, with the grant money that we obtained from the state, planted about 50 trees
This
month.
year?
This month. In people's front
Could
yards.
I ask what type of trees?
Yeah,
Maples or?
yeah. There's 3 kinds. There's a lot of people's front yards have power lines, so you don't want to plant a big tree.
Yeah.
And yet, if you're trying to improve the tree cover, obviously you want a big tree. So we had some big oak trees, which are really top of the food chain if you understand biodiversity. And then we had a couple of shorter ones, including service berries, like 20-foot tall trees.
They're
Trees
called
that are
service
native.
berries?
Service berries
I never
are
heard
all
of
over the place. You'll see them.
Service berries.
Yeah, you'll see them right about now. Maybe they're just finishing. They have white flowers.
I see. Wow.
And
service berries.
what I found, I was trained as an engineer. I've been trying to learn, the biology part. And once you learn about some of these plants, you start seeing them everywhere. But they're really a hardcore food and source, both berries and the caterpillars that birds need to feed their young.
And is
so,
there a third type of tree?
Yeah, there is.
No
It's,
maples?
no
I'm
maples.
surprised.
So let's talk about maples. Half the trees in town are Norway maples, which are considered a highly invasive plant and are displacing the native maples.
Really? Oh.
Secondly, we've done tree inventories of a lot of the public trees, and maples are a high percentage, sugar and red.
I see. Yeah.
The experts tell us you don't want to plant too much of any one tree. For example, we're losing and have lost all of our ash trees because there's a bug, emerald ash borer.
Yeah.
So if you have half of your trees are maples, and there's some sort of maple disease that comes along. If your trees are 10% maples, you lose 10%.
Yes.
If they're 50% maples, and there's a lot of them in public trees, you could lose 50%.
Yes, yeah.
But again, we're very responsive to public input, and I'd like to give a plug. If we have fun on the tree committee. Christine's very active with us, as I said. We get things done. She's got the resources of DPW and the energy. People like Christine and people like me and Evan help write grants, so we get stuff done. If anyone's interested, come to our meetings. Two of our current members that are very active spent time with us for a year, just as extra volunteers because they had certain projects in mind. So if you're interested in trees, there's lots of opportunity to organize something in your neighborhood with or without town involvement, help participate in getting grant money to pay for stuff. There's no end to what could be done with a little additional help on these things.
Nice.
So anyway, I'm going to keep going.
We only have a couple minutes left.
Yeah, so I wanted to close by talking about the Conservation Commission. And, maybe that could be a separate conversation.
Yeah, but you could summarize some
But
things
I'll
now,
summarize
though.
a few things. So, conservation commissions were formed in Massachusetts in the 60s to protect natural resources.
Yeah.
But it was kicked up a notch in the 80s when experts at the state realized how important wetlands were to clean drinking water and reducing floods and all these other values, and realized that we had lost half of them.
Oh,
So they put in a Wetland Protection Act, and our town responded with its own set of bylaws. So if you want to build anything within 100 feet of a wetland or 200 feet of a stream, you need to go before the Conservation Commission, and you sometimes don't need a permit, but often you do.
okay.
Once that happens, there's a whole series of regulations town meeting has passed, which means let's build the thing, but not make anything worse, and try to make things better environmentally. And that's kind of the short version.
Right.
That's
you.
about 90, I'm going to make it quick, that's about 90% of what Concom spends time on. The other is 10% is managing the big town conservation parcels. So about 90% of the 1,100 acres of conservation land in town is under the management of the Conservation Commission. And we're going to run out of time, but we're starting to do some cool things that have never been done before. And a good example is at Warren Pole. There's an ongoing invasive plant program with a couple of different plants that we're going after, and that we're also working with the land trust on replanting some of the native shrubs along it. There was a similar project done recently with high neighborhood involvement at Thanksgiving Forest,
Yeah.
pollinator gardens, invasive plant removal, and replanting
Wow.
the plants that originally were there. So we could talk about that another time, but
Yeah.
there's a great opportunity for anybody interested in plants and how they interact with our town ecology.
Well, thank you so much, Peter Sporn, for being with us today. And you're right, maybe we could plan another program in the future. We have Memorial Day coming up on Monday, so I'll be taping the parade and the service that day. There's also going to be the unveiling of the beautiful Chelmsford clock in North Chelmsford, right across the street from Rosie's. So after that, hopefully we could put another show together. You did a great job, Peter. You're doing so much for the town, as are all of the committee members and all of the DPW workers. And we have so many great volunteers in town, and you're a perfect example of them, Peter. So thank you very much, and thank you for taking the time to do this Chelmsford News Show so we could let people at home know what's going on, and maybe, hopefully, some of them will volunteer or just appreciate what you have to say about the environment of Chelmsford.
And I'd like to add, Tom, it really is a team effort in town. It's, really no one single person. Somebody has to have an idea. Somebody may have to get a project idea, embedded and planned out. But at the end of the day, there's tremendous team effort in this town. It's been very interesting and thankful to witness that.
As I agree, I think Chelmsford is one of the best towns in the country, as designated by Money Magazine a few years ago.
Oh.
A lot of people, the new people, may not realize that, but this is a national magazine that designated the town of Chelmsford as one of the best middle-class towns in the country. So thank you very much, Peter. Thank you all for watching the Chelmsford News Show. I hope to see you around town soon. Ciao.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Peter. So look at, oh, well, just so you